Here. No, it's here.
All right, I can text him.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Just Transition Subcommittee of the Vermont Climate Council. Today's Tuesday, June 11th. We're meeting on a different date and time from our normally scheduled Just Transition meeting. So appreciate people able to join this evening and excited to have our guests from Consensus Building Institute join us as well. We don't currently have quorum for the meeting, so we'll operate under that understanding of not making official decisions, but engage in conversation this evening. Carrie, thank you for being willing to take notes. I appreciate that. We have a few folks that are off camera or may go off camera due to internet and bandwidth. And we'll see if a few other folks are able to join us. We have quite a few folks that weren't able to be here tonight for personal reasons. So I thought I would just go through the agenda and then kind of review of the minutes from our May meeting before we turn into the actual action of our agenda. So we'll fill a few minutes in that welcome space and then turn to Sophie for a climate action office update with a few documents that have been shared with us around best practices for public comment, as well as the new climate action plan kickoff event dates that have been scheduled later this month. Claire is here, so we may have tap Claire to talk us through this knowledge bank tool concept that we've been playing with and that Claire's really been the lead on, and then check in to see if any liaisons have attended other subcommittee meetings. So that's the Climate Action Office update. Then we'll do just a really brief check-in around the guiding principle exercise of the weatherization example that some folks may have taken time to work on over the last couple of weeks. And if not, then we'll at least just address that we have two practice sessions that are scheduled for July or are held for July and August, and be sure that we get those on the calendar. We'll take a brief break for public comment if we have members of the public here at 5:50. And then the majority of our meeting is designed to be spent engaging public engagement topics. So that's why we have David and Indra and Pashka here from Consensus Building Institute to talk to us about their activities that they've engaged in and upcoming public events. We have all had the assignment of thinking through if there's any questions that we want to share with our public engagement team for asking of our Vermont community members when they're out at events, and hear a little bit about what's next. And then we'll talk what's next for the Just Transition Subcommittee, sort of our summer plans and beyond. So any questions about the agenda, anything that anyone would like to add or shift? Great.
Abby, I'll just say that when you're talking about the exercise, if folks did do that exercise on the Just Transition principles and the guidance document, I can say a little bit about the guidance that we're trying to give to subcommittees and how they incorporate just transitions, the questions into their work. So if they're helpful at that moment, I can show sort of how we're trying to do it, because it should be aligned with the experience that you all are having.
Great. Yeah, I think that'd be helpful to do. Okay. Thanks, David. So without quorum, we won't do like a formal acceptance of minutes, but any comments or questions about the May 16th meeting minutes, I can put them in the chat here. They're also attached in the email and also available on the Vermont Climate Council calendar webpage. Any questions or comments? Okay, not hearing any. It feels a little odd for us to not do introductions of David, Indra, and Kashka yet, but are you all comfortable if we wait until 6 o'clock or maybe even earlier if we get to that point sooner before we do introductions? Okay, seeing some head nods, that's great. So then, Sophie, I'm going to turn it over to you to offer a Climate Action Office update. I see that Sophie just put in the chat the best practices for public comment draft document that was also shared with subcommittee members last week. But yeah, take it away, Sophie. I'm not able to hear you yet, though. Still can't hear you. The double mute situation. Or maybe headset or something.
How about now?
Perfect.
Great. And I apologize if my audio is poor quality, so we're caught between places this evening. So I'll start with the Climate Action Plan kickoff events, which are next week. Hopefully some of you are able to make it. Regardless of whether you're able to make it or not, we would love your help with spreading the word. We're kind of down to the last minute in terms of sharing the events out. So if you haven't yet, it would be greatly appreciated if you're able to post to your local front porch forum and share with a friend or two, or any organizations or networks you're connected with that you think might be interested. At the meetings, at the events next week, there will be some overview and context given by climate counselors, and then we'll break out into discussion rooms. There's going to be 3 organized by the 3 subcommittees that are drafting this update to the climate action plan. So that's cross-sector mitigation, agriculture and ecosystems, and rural resilience and adaptation. If you are a liaison, you should go to the subcommittee that you're a liaison for. If you are not, you can pick whatever your heart desires. And the co-chairs of that subcommittee are set up to ask some questions. If there's a just transitions perspective that you want to bring into that room, and a question that feels appropriate to bring in these values, that's the goal of having some just transitions members present. So please feel free to engage in that way. Oh, yep. And Abby's noted in the chat, there was an email today from Jane with all that information about how to share the events out. Okay, move on to the next thing. So there was a small little working group formed to move forward a couple of things that this group had identified as priorities. One of those things was some recommendations for how we can improve the public comment process during the climate action update. Abby shared that document around. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it or at least skim it. The goal is to finalize that document and be able to send it to the Climate Council for their approval at their July meeting, which is July 8th. So it would be great to get any feedback on that. I'm not sure exactly how this interfaces with not having quorum. I'm not sure if this is a decision or not. So we could also do a direct email response.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sophie. Maybe I just didn't quite hear. Were you saying what was it that was maybe affected by our lack of quorum?
Whether we can do any edits to that best practices for public comment and get to a stage where that's finalized.
Yeah, my guess is that we are not able to finalize it today, but I think we could still take discussion on it, and then maybe we'd have to share both any discussion changes with the full subcommittee members before we finalize the document in another email.
Okay.
It was the goal that the document would be finalized soon.
Yeah, before the July 8th climate council meeting so that they can approve it and say, yes, subcommittees, here is your guidance.
Okay, so I'm thinking I could send an email to the subcommittee and ask for any comments as well as share the discussion points that might come up today. And if there was any concern, then people could voice back and then we could consider that final.
That sounds great.
Were you wanting to take comment and just discussion about the document now or what?
We certainly could if time allows for it. If anybody was able to read that and had any comment, feedback, recommended changes. I did have one myself, but I'm going to leave the floor open for others first. Happy to pull that up on my screen if that's helpful. The link is in the chat.
What would be helpful for folks? Do you want to see the document on the screen? That'd be easiest. I see Sam. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think I saw an earlier version of this, and I think we'd had a chat at some point about this, and it was nice to see that incorporated. So, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we talked about earlier made it in here in terms of setting expectations and where and how that could be done. So I just appreciate seeing that there. So.
Well, I'll chime in with one comment. There's a lot of discomfort with, or questions about how appropriate it is. There's this one part about like welcoming people to identify themselves if they identify as a frontline impacted community member. And just wondering if that's really something that people want to do and if that feels like a little tokeny and is there really a purpose behind that or is it, I don't know, that was kind of the feeling that I got left with that particular part of the comment draft. And if we are recommending that subcommittees are making sure that every single person gets to talk, which they should be, and building up the time into their agenda for every person who wants to comment to be able to do so, then what is the real purpose or intent behind that? That's a question that I had.
I think maybe that was one of the ideas I floated, and it was through the lens of equity, trying to get to equity, that these are the voices that we are not paying attention to and who are not getting enough airtime overall. And that if somebody from an impacted or frontline community, like, should maybe be given more time than somebody else. And I think, but again, I do get the point too, that it's almost everybody and anybody could be a frontline community. But then if that's true, I don't think that's true. I think that's the counter argument, but I don't think that's true. Or else why would we be here doing this? Yeah. So I think that's why I suggested it.
This is Claire. I think also when we were talking about this, we weren't necessarily assuming that there would be unlimited time at meetings for comment. So it was a way to ensure that those who wanted to self-identify as a frontline or impacted community would have the priority time to speak if there was, for example, only 5 or 10 minutes for public comment at a given meeting. And also recognizing that not everyone would be comfortable self-identifying that way in public.
This may be moving on, and I don't want to cut anybody off if they have anything more to say on that, because I feel like that's important. but before I forget, I also just wanted to double check that along with this, that there's some sort of like, if people need any resources during the meeting, like either translation or anything else, is that available, and is that clearly available for them to make a comment or to communicate with folks during the meeting?
Is the question whether there are interpretation services available?
Or even a note on a meeting post that says if you are planning to attend and you would like that to request it in advance or something like that, or it could be other accommodations as well, whether in person or online. I can't remember what the agendas look like and if that's included on there, and
I
sort
don't
of
think so, and I don't know how that works because it's through the climate, it's like the climate council, and I don't know what resources they have. So I personally don't, feel like I have the expertise to answer that question on behalf of the climate council.
So I just want to welcome Kelsey and Ed to the meeting, which does bring us to a maybe short-lived quorum, which is actually a helpful time to have this moment, since we're talking about a document that if we can agree upon any discussion and changed items efficiently in this meeting, that would be great. So far, Sophie, I'm hearing kind of, yeah, Kelsey, did you come on video because you wanted to offer us some thoughts?
No, but I did just get on. So could you give me like a 1-sentence update of what we're talking about?
Yes. So we're in the Climate Action Office update portion of the agenda, and we're talking about the public comment best practices document that Sophie was walking us through. Folks may have had a chance to review that in advance of this evening. The ideal would be to have review of this draft document by this subcommittee, agreement around any updated comments or kind of suggestions to move this to a final document so that it can be presented as final at the July 8th Climate Council meeting. Did I get that right, Sophie? Okay. So the only piece that I have heard so far that may be like a wordsmithing edit would be on the bottom of page 1 under the oral comment given at subcommittee meetings, the second bullet under during the meeting, which is inviting commenters to identify as being on the front line of the climate crisis to comment first. And I think I'm not sure that I have captured the ideal language change, but I think we wanted to caveat that like if comfortable and if necessary or appropriate, given the number of public commenters and length of public comment period, so that this was not a requirement, but more of a suggestion if the circumstances facilitated.
I noticed one other thing, which is I'm not sure if we clearly spelled out like best practice would be to make sure that there's enough time in the public comment built in for everybody to comment. So maybe that's see if there's that specifically in there. And I can answer Mona's questions based on this document. Again, I'm not the one to speak for the council. I'm not a part of it. And I'm a staff support member for the subcommittee. I'm not a subcommittee member, so just to rename all of that. But part of what's included in this guidance is a little bit about what to do with the public comment and how to consider it. And it shows like stages at which, like, please look at these documents and consider them what you've read as you're drafting your actions. In the public comment, in your agenda, structure it so that the public comment comes before you make a decision. So it should be, the information is given, then you provide opportunity for public comment, then discussion that results in decision happens, and that discussion should refer to what you heard. So hopefully this document helps that to happen more. I'm not sure if that's like a comprehensive answer to your question, Mona, but I hope that that can help for the
Yes,
comments actually
thanks
being
for-
integrated.
Thank you.
Folks feel like the answer to that question is captured well enough in this best practices document?
I think the intention is there with like, with noting different places where it could be in the notes and then summarized and read back to folks, et cetera. But I do think it's definitely worth a separate bullet, like a clear reminder either at the top and or at the end of you know, or maybe just integrated more throughout too. Sort of, you know, just instead of just thanking the person for their comment, also like outlining how it will be integrated, whether it be in that meeting or later on, or if they're going to pass it on to a subcommittee or whatever the actions might be. Maybe we provide them a list because maybe that list is helpful in the moment.
Again, this is guidance for subcommittees during the drafting process.
That's an important clarification, Sophie, right? So this is not for the climate counselors themselves. Is there such a document that's designed for the climate counselors?
Do you know of any?
There's nothing that I'm aware of this with this specificity. There's practice that the council has had.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be kind of a future goal for either the climate council to consider adoption of the same kind of practices outlined in this document or something different. But I recognize, I appreciate what you're saying, Sophie, that that's not the audience intended for this exact document. This is more guidance for like us and for other subcommittees to follow.
Right, but my understanding is that it has to be approved by the.
Right, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe just a comment, I guess I'm hearing coming from the subcommittee, or at least a proposed comment would be for the climate council to consider, you know, adoption of similar or these exact best practices themselves. Does that sound like what folks are feeling? Anyone feeling uncomfortable with that being a recommendation? Thanks for the thumbs up, Mona. Okay. Any other kind of comments or edit suggestions to provide Sophie towards this draft?
This is Claire. Well, David just unmuted, but I saw his comment in the chat and I would be curious to hear your thoughts, David, about that.
Yeah, and I'll say this just as in my role of facilitator of the council and sometimes facilitator of subcommittee meetings. My experience has not been there's not enough time for public comment. So it hasn't been a question of who gets to go first, who gets to go second. That hasn't really been the issue to date. So it makes me a little queasy, that second bullet on the during the meeting about identifying and then getting to the front of the line. Because it just seems like a challenging thing to do in practice with self-identification in a moment. and who gets to go, who gets to speak in what moment. So it makes me a little queasy putting that in there as best practice. I think there's definitely opportunities to say, hey, we want to create dedicated time for folks who identify as being on the front lines of the climate crisis. And that could be a good best practice, is like, we want to do a dedicated time, and you do it in the agenda, and you work with people to invite people to the meeting, and it's organized in that way. But as a best practice, just in public comment, I'm not a huge fan of this, and it makes me nervous as someone who needs to implement it in practice.
Thanks for that, David. Oh, that sounds like there had been some kind of components of similar feelings from within the subcommittee. I think, David, you've articulated it well. What are members' reactions to kind of, I think I heard David proposing like a slight redrafting of creating space for members of frontline climate crisis communities to be afforded the I don't know how to describe it, but like a designated opportunity for comment, but not as a practice of public comment periods in subcommittee meetings.
I might make a suggestion. I'd be interested in those like Carrie and others who were thinking about this. I wonder if it went into the sort of preparing portion to say, consider making dedicated space, right? And work with community partners in inviting folks to be part of meetings, right? And so you create that dedicated space, and it's going in your sort of preparing aspect, as opposed to standard practice for the public comment section. I'm curious how that sounds to address what you're trying to do there.
Great, I like it being proposed as a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I don't have like super strong feelings either way, but then again, it's like now we're taking the frontline communities and sectioning them off. And like that doesn't necessarily feel good to me either. Saying like, well, you're different, but it's almost like, and we'll consider your comments, but they're not actually public comments. So I don't know. Maybe it was just the way you phrased it.
My intention
Or
was
how
not
like
to be
Abby recaptured it was like somehow it was less than the public comment period, however it was phrased, to the way I took it in. But
I'd be interested to hear Claire's thoughts.
Yeah, well, the way I heard Dave, or what I thought of when David was speaking, was it would almost be like bringing a just transitions moment to the subcommittees, like the one that has existed at the council level. But if you were planning for it, there would be an intentionality to like align the community partner or partners that you would be inviting to speak about it with whatever was on the agenda for that meeting. So if there were specific recommendations being discussed, you could work to invite community partners who could speak to some of the equity related issues embedded in thinking about those recommendations. So I didn't hear it as like a public comment per se, but more of how could we intentionally weave these comments into the meeting itself.
so I think
Okay.
it's good as long as it's like there's still public comments that need to be responded to. I guess that is sort of just my concern.
So I think that might kind of dovetail to Sam's comment in the chat, which is that in addition to informing discussion at meetings themselves, public comments could be shared with relevant other subcommittees for response, discussion, or integrated into, when you say draft chapters, Sam, are you saying within the climate action plan?
Yeah, I don't know. The question marks are because I'm not exactly sure how they've been used in the past and how they could be used. But I think us starting to do that thinking would hopefully encourage others to think more intentionally about that as we before we get more, so that, we're utilizing and integrating them more than just an appendix, which I did include on there, but it would be great to maybe put a little thinking into what kind of feedback would be useful and how could it be integrated meaningfully.
That to me, your suggestion is sort of like in the accountability category, I think, of just sort of bringing intention to the communication or sharing of public comments that subcommittees may receive. So maybe that would be an after the meeting edition or an other. So currently on the bottom of page 2, the written comment received through public comment form and or survey has that those comments will be shared with your subcommittee members, but not to others, not to other subcommittees. And then, Sophie, you're tasked with entering all public comment into the library.
Yeah, so Agency of Digital Services is working on a database for us to house these comments. So Sam, to your point of being able to cross-share comments that might be relevant to another subcommittee, we can totally do that. I don't have that mechanism built and accessible yet. So in the meantime, it will really just be asking subcommittees to like let other subcommittees know if there's something that they think would be relevant to another subcommittee. But over the longer term, I think that will be possible for me to kind of structurally send out blasts of comments to subcommittees. And that part that we integrated that was that's about bringing the written comments to the meeting as part of the public comment period. That's new. That's never been done before. So hopefully that will help with written comments, not just like floating into the ether, but them being voiced and being actively part of the discussion. And then just to your point of the integration to the drafters, I think the way that that would happen is through the discussion. So the comments come to the discussion, the subcommittee discusses, and what they end up with should be informed by what they've been hearing. And that's kind of how my brain makes sense of that. I don't know if that feels reflective of what you're thinking or if you had something else in mind.
Okay, I'm hearing that there's been a few suggestions. Do you have some like redrafted language that you want to share back to us? Or I want to see if we can honor the desire to have a final version tonight,
Yeah, so
the next minute or so.
yeah, so I have okay, so I have just a suggestion that for the Climate Council as a whole might consider adopting some kind of a similar practice in the future, looking at this kind, having something like this for themselves, recognizing that this is just for subcommittees, that's all we're looking at now, but maybe the Climate Council might want to look at doing something like this in the future. I have including that a best practice is to build in enough time for public comment into the agenda. I have, if there's comments that are relevant to like a different subcommittee, to make sure to connect the dots and share that with the other subcommittee. Recognizing that in the future there will be better mechanisms for this, but right now it kind of falls on the subcommittee themselves to do that. And then I kind of took a note based on what David was saying, but I'm not sure if we got to like a final point with that, saying, consider making dedicated space, working with partners and inviting testimony from people who are on the front lines of climate change as kind of a replacement to that, like what order people are in line. So that's kind of what I took away from that. I'm not sure if that was really thumbs up as like the final version. If we could ask if anybody has any opposition to that.
I see a hand from Claire, and then there's a comment in the chat from Mona that I'll get to also, but yeah, go ahead, Claire.
That sounded good to me. I don't have any kind of opposition, but I wonder if, I know I tend to be more visual, so since we have a little bit of time, I think, before it could be approved, could we like send it out to the subcommittee and with if you have comments, let me know by a week from today. Otherwise, we'll consider this final. That might be a good next step.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for that suggestion. And Mona asked, is there a timeline for addressing public comments, including where these answers would be posted or public? Do we want to hold ourselves accountable to like a reasonable time frame?
Yeah, so I think the way that this guidance is set up is that the comments would be addressed in meeting by the subcommittee. Again, recognizing subcommittees, not climate council. There's some trickiness, as I understand it, with having like a written response that takes a lot more overhead of like getting an entire subcommittee to agree to one written response is a lot more difficult than having a discussion in a live meeting, which does get recorded and posted publicly. But just understanding that the overhead is already a lot for you all who are, you know, doing this in your extra time, and that, you know, agreeing to a written response would involve a lot of email back and forth. And just the understanding that getting an agreed upon written response to every comment is probably not going to be practical with the nature of the structures of these entities. So that's my understanding of why it makes sense to respond in a spoken manner during meetings that are recorded and posted online. But that's, I'm not saying that as like set in stone fact or rule, but that's the context that I have come to understand.
I appreciate that, Sophie. What do you think about the entering into the public comment library?
Yeah, that can be done. So the idea is that when there were public comments that were made orally, that the person taking the minutes would let me know when the minutes are ready, and then I would be able to enter that into the library. So we have them sort of in an organized place in perpetuity. That would already automatically happen with the written comments. So that's great and easy. So hopefully this system can work. We might have like a couple of kinks to shake out along the way as we get used to it. But that's the idea, is that after a meeting, the oral comments would be recorded in the minutes, and then I would be able to upload that to our public comment database.
Mona, any kind of follow-up questions or concerns about those responses to your question?
One thing is that nobody is held accountable when they are just talking orally. You know, usually the written response is the one that you can actually say, oh, this is what you said you're gonna do and you did not do. And this is the only thing that I am worried about, just because I attended many meetings and there's some people, they raise some stuff and I don't know what did the subcommittee or the council do with all these people when they raise an issue or something like this. But this is what they want to do. So no, but I feel like, you know, a written response is an important and means that we are accountable for, you know, for addressing this comment and for taking action, and we're gonna be doing or intentional on what we are planning to do. But just talking about it, or sometimes it just get dissolved and evaporate in the air, and there is no action is taken.
Thanks for that, Mona. I too, I hear you in that there could be improvements in these best practices around accountability. And I'm not sure what the best path forward is, assuming that, you know, this is a new beginning, a new process. Do we want to try it for a while as it's outlined? And if we find that there's a lack of accountability, recommend, you know, adding some time frame for response and posting, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure which is, you want to start off being very prescriptive of, you know, within 60 days and, you know, like that kind of language, or if we want to just see if this works as drafted first. I see that Kelsey has to leave. Anything, Kelsey, that you want to offer before you have to hop off?
I guess the only thing is just making it known that, or like that the expectation is that we want public comment. So I'm generally agreeing with these things, but whatever our wording is like we want to do this work with public comment. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, to ensure that there's a culture of incorporation of public comment into our work. Yeah. All right, well, how do folks feel about Sophie sending around a kind of updated or track changed version by email, giving us, you know, 5 days to respond or without feedback or comment, considering the version final to present to the Climate Council on July 8th? Anyone have concerns about that approach? Okay. Great. So I think we're going to go with kind of faith in these best practices and, you know, self accountability. But I want to just note that, you know, I think, Mona, you're ready to call us to task. Not you personally, but like your comment is ready to call us to task if it doesn't seem that the reporting and sharing and incorporation of public comment actually does indeed occur. Matthew, did you have your hand up for a moment?
Thank you for bringing it. Yeah, I do have some concerns as, you know, digesting this information too as well. There's members, you know, that, like I said, myself, learn things and do things differently, and we want to respect that too as well. That, you know, if we do this, you know, we gotta make sure to give those other individuals, you know, some time to actually, because it ain't like we can flip a switch, you know, and make it plain language the next day. It takes time. The Vermont, as I see, it takes time for it to integrate some of this stuff. And to me, it's like, it does. That's the only concern I have is, you know, like myself, I'm gonna use myself as an example. There's other members that we're still using, unless we can turn it, like flick a switch, you know, and do it all overnight, turn into something that's brand new, you know, a brand new document, you know. It's like I said, it's a work in progress. I do think that might cause for some conflict, you know, of interest, you know, when people are reading that. It just, you know, you gotta give people time to actually read that, especially if it's explanatory, too technical, too wordy as they call it, because, you know, you want them to digest, to see what it said, instead of saying, oh, we got this, you know, this document, this draft document, but nobody knows what it is because they didn't get a time to actually digest it in a way or make sense of what it says. And that's the hard part, is making sense of what it says, And if it doesn't make sense for individuals, how can they respond in their conscience, correctly? So thank you for, bringing that up. There are some questions, there are some concerns in my beliefs, that, still, this is a still technically, overly complicated document, but still it has to, we got to adjust and accommodate for that technicality part. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Matthew. And I think maybe that's also something that we could kind of check back in over time of like how well understood these best practices are. Not only are they being adopted and timely, accountable implementation of the best practices, but are they even being well understood? And or if, plain language translation, other supports would be helpful.
To me, it would be, because, as you may know, there's not less, and I'm seeing this across the state, there's a lot less participation in any of these, type of work, because we're overly complex. We assume they know everything. We assume everybody knows something. To me, that's not the case. To me, it's like we may need to pivot very quickly to plain language if we're going to succeed in what we're trying to say. And like I said, that is one aspect, of the bigger picture of the problem. Is it being well understood? No. And that's what you're going to hear from community members. No, because we didn't, anticipate their access need. We got to anticipate every individual access need is different. So we got to anticipate that and account for that moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think there is an important message in what you're sharing, which is that this is how we as subcommittees are going to process public comment, but there also needs to be a real clear communication about how public comment can be shared, either submitted in writing. And I know that language exists, but it might be something that we need to look at and make sure that it's accessible, that it's clear, so people know, members of the public know how they can provide comment.
I wonder
if we want to, yeah, thank you. So it's just, if we want to see that vision happen together, thank you.
I guess I just had a clarifying question for Matthew. Were you talking about the instructions on how to comment, or were you talking about the materials in general, like what the subcommittees are bringing forward for public comment should be in plain language?
Yeah, it's all of the above. I mean, in my work across the state, I'm seeing, people are not participating because we think and assume that they know everything. That's not the case. And not just me as a subcommittee member, but other subcommittee, Earl, he's one for one that says if it's not written or understood very well, and he's a very big environmental advocate, of all of the above, if it ain't understood very well, no one's going to get what we're saying. And it could fail on us to actually promote that. And we don't want to be looked at as failures. We want to succeed in this together. And that's a great importance that I see moving for us to move together, is trying to succeed in places where, language is pretty hard to interpret, but we got to do it. Either we do it or we fail together, plain and simple. Thank you.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like maybe there is another recommendation to add to this. If it's not in there, if I didn't see it, that it's like materials presented for public comment should be presented in plain language and or have a plain language summary if it's just like too technical that you can't do it. Because I don't know other state workers, if you saw today, the Office of Racial Equity posted something in the team site about how they did a plain language summary for the Office of Racial Equity plan. And the person who wrote it shared kind of their experience of doing it and what worked and what didn't. And that sounded like that was one of the things that they did. Like, knowing there's some government words we feel like we have to use legally, there's still an official document, but there is like a shorter plain language version.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. There should be another avenue, another option than using what we have that's official, because like I said, it's, it's to the point that now to what I see in my work across, various groups, is there's no participation because they do not understand that they're going to be honest with themselves. I don't know what you saying. And if they're saying that, then we have pretty much failed on our part to give them that vital information the way they, interpret it, so yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I was able to add that as a note for another amendment to this document. I briefly summarized as when taking public comment, when there's like a written thing that goes along with what a subcommittee is receiving feedback about, ensure that a plain language version or plain language summary is available.
Great. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, it's 5:55. We need to take public comment at this moment. Before we do so, Sophie, is there anything else that you need from this group? Okay. Great, so you're gonna share those track changed edits and suggestions back to the group. We will have, a short period of time to comment and offer feedback if we want changes. No response will be seen as approval, and ability to move forward as final. Great, thanks everyone for that feedback. So I want to just take a quick pause for public comment. Is there anyone as a member of the public that would like to share and offer perspective? Share anything? Yeah, Shalini. Welcome.
Hi. It's not so much that I have anything in particular to share, but I'm on my way to another presentation that I have to give, and I wanted to at least say hello and stop in on the committee. Hey, Carrie. So nice to see some friendly faces in the group and people who I've had a chance, lucky enough to work with. So I wanted to thank you all for the work you're doing. I think it's really important.
Thanks for joining us, Shalini. Thanks for your remarks. Appreciate that very much.
Sure. I'm also looking forward to a chance to start collaborating with you. So I had a chance to do a little bit of a check-in with Abby, and I'm blanking. Kelly, that's right. So I'm just looking forward to following up on that, and I will plan to stay in touch. I'm sorry I couldn't join you for more of the meeting today. Oh, Sophie, there you are. So yeah, good luck to all of you, and I'll circle back at some point when I get to join one of your meetings and start doing some work with you.
Great.
Okay, great to see you all, or those of you who I can see. Bye.
Bye, Shalini.
Great. It's lovely to have Shalini. For those that may not know, Shalini works with the Office of Racial Equity for the state of Vermont. Okay, so I'm going to close public comment, not seeing any other hands or any other members of the public here this evening. So we had a few other items in the Climate Action Office update, and I have at least one practical question around the guiding principles follow-up that I hoped we could address before we close this evening, but we had also scheduled for CBI to be on the agenda at 6. So we're there. Kind of Indra, Kashka, David, does 55 minutes seem sufficient for you all? What would be the ideal amount of time that you'd like or need on the agenda?
I think that sounds good to me.
Okay, So then we're
So-
gonna go with 55 minutes, which means we'll have 5 minutes at the end of, at 6:55 before we break at 7 p.m. That I want to just, I think we need to touch base on a few things that we didn't get to. We're not going to get through all items, I don't believe, at this point. So I'm making a shift in the agenda, which I don't know that I can do without a quorum, but I don't know. It feels important to kind of dedicate the time that we intended to public engagement efforts this evening. Okay. Yeah,
To be
Indra.
honest, I don't know if we need 55 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'd love to welcome you, give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves, share with us about your recent public engagement and the focus groups. Everyone's had a chance to read the 2024 Q1 report summary that you've shared. And I think some have hopefully, or all of us have had a chance to think about some questions that we'd love for you to consider including in your community visit. So let's turn it over to the three of you and see when we end, leaving us at least 5 minutes before we wrap at 7. That would be great.
Super. Well, Indra and Kashka can really speak to the depth of the work happening. I have 2 slides to give an overview, or 3 slides. And I might show those just for those who are not as familiar about what is going on. If I haven't met you yet, my name's David Plum, and I work with an organization called the Consensus Building Institute. And we do a lot of different kinds of work around dialogue and facilitation. And we happen to be facilitating the work of the Vermont Climate Council, but we also are doing public engagement. Indra and Kashka are the team in Vermont doing the work, along with another colleague, Ann Stoner, Nelson Stoner, or many of you may have come across her. So I just want to do a quick overview of like what's going on. And then I would love Indra and Kashka to really speak to so what it feels like to do this work right now and what we're all taking away from it. So just in the most basic of overviews, and I think some of you have seen this, the work we've been doing for the last year or so has been 4 things, sort of 4 buckets. One is we're going out to events, we're tabling events, we're choosing events where frontline communities are gathering, communities that aren't typically involved in policy processes like this, and we're showing up and having conversations, and folks are giving contact information if they want to be more involved going forward. So we've done a bunch of that, and it's been a lot of fun. Kashka and Indra can talk more about that. We're also doing small group conversations, like focus groups, and we did 6 of them this winter, focused on linguistically diverse Vermonters. So we did these in several languages. Mona helped us with that, and others helped us with it. And they were fantastic. And you'll see some of the output of that in that the first quarter report that we did. The third thing we're doing is we're convening community-based organizations. And Matthew's been part of that, and others have been part of that, those convenings. And we've had some virtual gatherings to talk about climate action in Vermont, and how we can coordinate that. And then we're also holding public meetings or assisting the Climate Action Office to hold public meetings. And we did a set of those around the resilience implementation strategy. And we'll be doing more of that. So that's what we've been doing. And to date, the work, with the exception of that resilience implementation strategy public meetings, has been very sort of open-ended in initiating conversation and welcoming where people want to go with the conversation. And that's been the work to date. And what you'll find going forward is we're going to have more targeted conversations and input to help guide the update of the climate action plan and this other major strategy, which is the resilience implementation strategy. So we are in the process of being more specific with questions and being more targeted in how we're engaging with folks. And the last thing I'll say is, going forward, what's going to happen is we will continue to show up at events. We are being deliberate in getting outside of Chittenden County more and more. We initially piloted stuff, much of it in Chittenden County for those events. So we are getting out and around the state over the summer. We welcome ideas about great events to show up at and table at. We will continue to hold small group conversations. A good portion of those will be more stakeholder focused around the climate action plan once subcommittees have some draft ideas they want to share in the fall. We'll be continuing to convene community-based organizations, and we're starting a more special set of activities with CAP agencies across the state, looking for different ways to interact with low-income Vermonters and specifically lift up those voices. And then we'll do public meetings, including some next week, that I hope you all can participate in, and Sophie described them earlier. Okay, so that's it. That's all I wanted to share. And I feel Indra and Kashka, you've been in the thick of doing all this work. You can see Indra looking handsome here in this photo in the lower right. So these are, Indra and Kashka, I wonder if you can just say a word about what it feels like to be out doing these conversations, having these really diverse focus groups, meeting with people at events. Like, can you give us a little flavor, sort of what it all feels like? Because we're finally doing the work that we've wanted to do for the last 3 or 4 years. I can drop the slides, although it is nice to look at Indra in the slides.
I like the slides.
All right. Bill, I can happily pull those back up if people want to reference that. But Indra and Kashka, can you just say a little word about sort of how it feels to be out doing this work these days? And, what you think the folks here in the Just Transition Subcommittee should be knowing about what it feels to be out there doing this work.
Sure. So, Indra, if you age before beauty. So my name is Kashka Orlo, she, her pronouns, and some of you might know me and some new faces I see here. I used to be on the Just Transition Subcommittee as a frontline community member, representing frontline community members like myself. And then I became part of the Consensus Building Institute in support of the Climate Action Office, doing the engagement work. So it's really quite aligned with the work that I had been doing for Just Transitions. And I remember back in the day being part of Just Transitions, and Mona and I specifically would talk about often, like, what is happening? What is going on? Like, why aren't we talking to people? Why aren't we getting out there? And finally, I get a chance to actually do that, to be out there, to be talking to folks, to be attending events, to be speaking to different communities that are never asked for their comment, nor are they engaged in trying to have a conversation around anything that has to do with policy or government work, etc. And it's been really, really rewarding to be out there talking to folks. And I know that oftentimes members of the Just Transition Subcommittee are asking these questions, like, what is going on? Where's public engagement? Who are we talking to? So this is exactly what we're here to let you all know, like what we've been doing and who we're speaking with and what we're hearing on the ground. And we've done, just like David said, we've done focus groups, we've done community events, and now we're doing more targeted work, as in we're asking more specific questions now that we're finally engaging with community members and saying, we want to hear from you. We're here and we want to hear from you. We're interested in your comments. We're interested in your thoughts. And your perspectives are going to be taken back and used, within the governmental process to make up the new revised climate action plan. For me, it's been quite amazing. You meet so many people, and oftentimes, I want to bring up something that Matthew keeps bringing up. Oftentimes, it's a little bit frustrating when the things that are being presented are so far out of people's scope of what their understanding is within what's happening within the government. It has to be simplified in a way where it relates directly to their daily life, where we are presenting or listening to their stories in a way so that we can communicate the way that they're telling the stories, communicate that to the people who are making the decisions, and translate them in a way where the policies and everything that's going on, where that can be made whole from the stories being heard on the ground. So that's what we've been doing quite a bit. And like I said, it's been extremely rewarding. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep meeting with people. If you guys know of any events, I keep saying this, if you know of any events that you would like us to table at or just show up, preferably outside of Chittenden County. Just like I said, we're now expanding outside of Chittenden County. That would be wonderful. Just let Sophie know, and we'll do our best to make it there, because this is really important work. So I'm going to pass it over to Indra to continue with that.
Thank you, Indra, he, him. And when I look at the screen, I know almost all of you. Some from Just Transition work, Sam, our tribe work, Kelly, our health equity work. So it's great. I would say this, I think in terms of interacting with people, there is a diversity of opinion that I've heard from, have they heard about climate change? And for some, there is a confusion around even the use of term climate change. They may not have heard climate change, but they know of it when we start to talk about the impact. I have not yet met a single person, including a person that I interacted with, who told me to look into the corner, the tilting of the earth and how that is causing the climate change. It's not any other sources, but the impact was felt. Meaning in the conversation, when we move into the impact that's been experienced, there is a common sense of understanding, even if people may disagree in terms of policy. Am I saying that the frontline communities are only there? No. We have also interacted with people where they were giving us proposal around how to make it be even more cost effective, how things are done differently in other countries, how consumerism focused US culture is really bad, and that is the prime source. So we have heard diverse source of diverse opinions across the state. The impact remains the same. What are we doing this for? Was one of the questions we used to grapple with when I was a Just Transition Subcommittee member. How do we make impact? We keep on hearing these voices. How do we make impact? I will be very blunt and honest. I still don't know. I'm doing this as a contractor. I still don't know. But I was super grateful when I saw Sophie prepare that summary and send it to all the council members and the subcommittee members, because these comments are not just sitting with us in our drives. In my notebook, I have a couple of them, but they're making it to you and hopefully to Climate Council members. And I hope that they're utilized, as I always say, a powerful call for change rather than people just complaining. It is people really asking for a change. How does that happen? I'll be very blunt. I don't know just yet. But one thing that I think we have done is building the community. We are showing up where people are. We haven't done this just yet, but Casca and I are planning on showing up even at grocery stores. because that's where people are. Showing up at a fair that happens, just walking in the community, talking to people, providing more structure space. And I think we have started to become more intense. In our last meeting, we were talking about, like, are there any specific question, policy oriented question that we can ask in a very simple terms, not as policy question, but rather translating those ideas into that way. And we had a meeting with CAP agencies where I was told, and it's beautiful, that we don't need to do more focus groups because we already know what people are going to say. That is a reality. Oftentimes we want to hear more voices, but, like, have we not heard enough? Right? Like, so people are sharing. So what are we going to do with it? That is not to say we don't want to do focus group at all or don't have the value, but it is more of like, how do we become more structured? And we are meeting with the ED team of the CAP agencies next month to propose our idea of, like, regularly meeting with people who are working directly with low-income Vermonters. And is there a way we can channel those stories and bring them to the subcommittee? Because that was one of the challenges when I was doing similar community engagement before becoming the Just Transition subcommittee member through Capstone. There were a lot of folks who wanted to share the story, but they would generally not want to be in one of our meetings. And there might be a whole lot to say about it, but, like, is there a way we can support, not only engage and hear their voice, like really empower, not only inform, but go to the empower sense, in the sense of, like, help them be prepared and bring them to the meeting. That's what we are thinking. The change as I see it is we are showing up in the community, we are meeting people, and we are trying to do that very regularly. That is what I will share. See, I said we won't need 55 minutes, but maybe there will be a lot of questions and we'll need more time. But happy to answer any of the question, and good to see y'all from the other role. Right? Can't decide to vote yes or no. See? Powerless.
Thank you all for being here and sharing the work that you're doing. Yeah, it's a long time coming and much appreciated. I'm curious, are there any questions that came to mind from subcommittee members that you wanted to ensure that Kashka, Indra, David were keeping front of mind as they are visiting with communities?
I guess I appreciate that. I think obviously there's so many great reasons why Chittenden County was where this was launched. And I guess one question would just be sort of how have you planned to shift your approach just outside? You know, there's a lot of a lot of different reasons why I have that question, and I do not subscribe to the two Vermonts narrative, but at all. But I certainly think that there is there are good reasons to consider going into different communities with different framings and different lead questions and different things like that. And also just the type of space, the type of interaction may be different. There are a lot of community lunches I know across our region and others where you might have a fifth of a town every Wednesday at 12, you know, things like that, but you know, necessarily that's also what people are going to be visiting the food shelf or something else, or, you know, have other priorities while they're going to be there. Is there something that people can take home? Or is there a quick ordering, like 1, 2, 3, put these in the top order, like other activities that people can get engaged with when they're at the dump or something like that, that are part of your plans, either outside Chittenden County or also in, could be in as well, but sort of as you progress, are they all conversation based, which is also great, or other things like that where we might get some sort of quantitative as well as qualitative feedback, either on priorities, maybe it's chapter based or strategies or something like that. I don't know. Just thinking out loud a little bit, and then yeah, I guess that's my main question. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we've had so many, and another, we're not alone, so many flood recovery meetings with towns, and also like a huge swell of LHMPs, local hazard mitigation plans, that have had to, I think we've done like 8 in the just past year. So there's a lot of public meetings, a lot of public outreach. So will you be visiting some of those documents or some of those meeting minutes as a prep to going into some of those communities and or the VCRD community visits, and what role do those play in prep, if at all?
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying I think David misspoke. Oh, it feels good to put David saying like David misspoke. It feels good. We also had Wasein County focus. We have actually shown up in Wasein County. One of our focus group was actually in Wasein County. And in our community-based organization meeting, we have been tracking which counties are represented. I think we're missing one or two, but we have participation from many different counties. So it's not like we're only limited to Chittenden County. We are trying. And the second thing is what role the other public comment play. I think it's really good idea to understand where people are, and given a lot of people understand impact more so than the concept and the policy around climate change. Most of the public comments, and I work on public engagement on many different projects. So, like there's a whole lot of comments that I've read. It allows me to really be like, okay, when we are walking into this community, there is a bare understanding of these are certain things that people are talking about, allowing us to have that conversation. For example, even in the focus group, like we were talking about linguistically diverse, but when we were talking to a particular group of people who really enjoy the fact that Vermont is getting a little warmer because we actually didn't like the cold, right? Versus the other group where it's like, the snow is gone, we can no longer celebrate. Like, you have to have that understanding. So if we find any of those comments like that are coming up in any of the meeting, I think that will help us be informed when we are showing up in those communities. So if there are any resources, any organizations that we should meet with, or any events that we should attend, not saying we can do all of them. There were some constraint around like, do we get to travel? Like, do we put that in the budget and whatnot? We have gone past that hurdle, and now we are really ready to go. So like, if there are any event recommendation, I know that Sophie shared with us the event list that you shared, Sam. And when I saw your name, I was like, oh, Sam Lass. Okay, good. And we are adding some of the events that you shared in our event folder as well. So like, if there are any recommendations, please do share. Our intention is to show up and talk to people. And if there is more awareness about the impact that's being felt, I think that is a good way to start the conversation, more so than policy conversation, because who likes to talk about policy? I do, but.
Well, and I want to add to Sam's comment as well, regarding, kind of compartmentalizing or asking, specific questions like 1, 2, 3 regarding this, or, gauging where somebody is on the whole climate agenda that's going on. And we're not doing anything specific of that sort as of yet. But like I said, the conversations have to be more focused on a personal level, especially with frontline communities, and having certainly having the knowledge about different programs that are out there really helps the conversation move forward, and see if anyone has utilized any programs in the past, how they've worked for them, etc. I think that's probably something that we're really thinking about for the future, so that we can relay that information again, so that information has an impact on future policies and future programs, because a program's only as good as the people who use it and whether or not they even know about it. So that's kind of where we are right now. We want to make sure that the information that we're gathering on the ground is really being utilized to help make changes. It's just the same as what you all were just talking about, public comment, right? Like, well, what happens with public comment? We get public comment, somebody actually takes the time to come and make a comment and discuss how they feel and what happens with that. How does that really make a difference? And I think that's one of the most important things, the latter part of what's happening with what we're doing.
Sam, I really appreciate those two ideas of thinking about other activities that aren't so conversationally based and going through the minutes from the gazillion public meetings that have already been happening and see if there's good stuff there. I think those are two really nice ideas, and I appreciate you saying them, Sam.
And one other thing that I'll say is in terms of gaining feedback from other folks, in case the subcommittee meeting gets viewed by other Vermonters, we have a number that people can call, 802-404-2729. 802-404-2729 on the
Drop in the
record.
chat.
Yeah,
Drop
could you put that in the
that
chat?
call. Folks can call and just leave their voicemail. It is an active voicemail. And if they don't want to participate and talk to us, right, people can just show up and leave us the voicemail, and we will treat that as a comment that we heard from people as well. So that is a live number people can call. Text, even if they don't want to call, they can even text that number with their comment, and we'll collect that as the feedback from the general public. So we have that number going too.
So this is just anybody can call you or text you with their comments?
Any Vermonters, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Anybody. I mean, if they're not Vermonters and are trying to call, there will not be a way to verify, but we'll have the number as to what number called us. Not saying non-Vermonters may not have 802 or Vermonters will always have 802. I believe in 802, but that's only me.
That's cool.
Yeah, one other thing that I do want to underscore, because when I was a Just Transition Subcommittee member, one of the things that we used to talk about is not reinventing the wheel, and can we engage the partners that are already doing the work and respect their work. That's kind of been at the core. I'm not going to say we are 100% and we'll get, the 100% checkbox just yet, but before showing up to the community and asking for feedback, we are gathering the community organizations that are already doing the work and asking for their feedback rather than simply showing up. And I also want to kind of recognize the fact that some of the members of the Just Transition Subcommittee have played a crucial role in helping us show up in the community. Mona facilitated one of the conversations, right? Matthew has been a crucial part of attending our community-based organization meetings. So there has been a support. I feel like we are really connected to the Just Transition Committee, although we don't come there very often. So
Indra and Kashko, David, I'm curious, do you feel that you have a strong mechanism for sharing what you're hearing back with the Climate Council and with subcommittees that are looking at the climate action plan strategies and kind of engaging in this new plan 2.0? And if you do, can you just kind of describe that a little bit?
So the mechanism that we're using now is based around those quarterly reports and trying to get on other subcommittees' agendas for them to be paying attention to that. So that's one key mechanism. And we're going to do the same thing with the council. So we want that sort of high level but substantive piece that they can dig their teeth into. So that's one piece. Another piece is subcommittees, we're encouraging them to come to us with specific questions they have or specific populations that they'd like to reach, and we can be responsive to those requests. And then we feed that right back to them. We haven't really had that yet because the subcommittees are just getting going on their revision. And the third thing we're trying to do, as Indra mentioned, is probably helping to prepare community members who have important experience to share with subcommittees and or the council, and work with them to prepare to come and have a conversation with and present at subcommittee meetings or potentially council meetings. And so that, and particularly through the CAP agencies doing that, is what we hope to do going forward. So these are all different pathways of getting this content in front of subcommittees in the council.
Great.
I'm gonna say that I'm not sorry. I'm still, and this is like speaking as a Just Transition former member and everything. For me, it's still not. We're not there yet, right? I feel like that process, I think is getting worked out, and I'm hopeful that it's actually going to make an impact. I think that's everybody's hope for sure. But for me, I'm not really quite seeing that yet. Sorry. Truth.
Yeah, that's right, because the interaction hasn't really happened yet with the subcommittees, the other subcommittees, not you all, to the extent it needs to. It needs to be part of their work plans over the summer and fall.
Right. Like I feel like for me, doing this work is so important. It's so rewarding. It's so incredibly, it just makes you feel like finally, this is amazing. Like we're really engaging with all of Vermont, right? Or all of Vermont. We're trying to engage with as many folks as possible. But again, like I just want to make sure that it just doesn't exist in this bubble, that it really is helpful. That it's, it's just, that's, yeah.
I'll say I have seen indicators of it starting to happen. One, the summary that was prepared and shared with all the council and subcommittee, that was a really good start, because back when we did the community engagement, we did hear about 12 pages of public comment, and there was really no effective mechanism to share that. But this time, at least, it is landing in the inbox. Hopefully people are reading them, and hopefully they will influence. That's number one. And number two, I think the key mechanism of asking individual subcommittee to be like, what is a question that you want to hear from people? Like, what do you want people to answer? I think we'll get more attention, because now not only are we just collecting random feedback, but we are collecting feedback in the area that the subcommittee, a particular subcommittee or the council is interested in. And when that happens, I think it will have much more impact. And I hear Casca's hesitation of saying, absolutely, yes, that's why I muted myself, because I don't know if I feel very comfortable saying there is a mechanism that exists, but there are certain indicators that we have started that I'm hopeful will translate into those being transferred directly. But as always, it will take us to continue that conversation and to keep on asking the same question again and again, because until we do that, it will not happen.
So,
I
Andrea, I have something to say before we close. Just to make sure that the people, they're gonna hear back from you guys, because they wanted to hear back. They wanted to know what are you doing with what you collected from them, with all the concerns that's been raised by the community member. They are really have trust in you, and they are just waiting to hear back from you. How are you addressing all the comments that you are collecting and still collecting? Thank you.
No, that is the accountability, and that should be there, right? Like we have heard, and how do we continue becomes a question. And again, with all the comments that we have heard synthesized, we have sent it back to the community leaders. But one of the things that we are thinking about, Mona, and you probably haven't heard about it just yet because we haven't finalized, is rather than doing different focus group, what if we bring different linguistically diverse group? Because one of the comments that we heard in almost every single community conversation that we had, the focus group, was, oh, there are community leaders who are well-versed in this idea and we rely on them for the information. Why don't you utilize like that as a mechanism to share the information and get the feedback? That's what we heard. So we are planning on, I don't know if we have announced this yet, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but I think we're moving into that direction anyway. We're trying to do an entire morning, not 1 hour of meet and leave, but an entire morning later into the year, not right away, where we can bring in a group of people like from different communities together at one place, and not do it as like cross, separate groups, but bring everybody together, and also bring in some of the people, some of the resources, people with the answer to the room, just so that some of the questions that are raised are not left unanswered. So we are actively thinking about it. I think we have kind of a date as an idea, and we'll be communicating about that very soon. And by very soon, give us some time. Like, I don't know what very soon looks like right now, but we are actively thinking about it. I just want to say we haven't forgotten. It's
Great, thank you.
Feel free to go ahead, Claire.
I don't know if anybody here can answer my question. I'll just preface it by that, so it's okay if there's no answer. But I know we're talking about how public engagement can get into the subcommittee discussions about prioritizing recommendations. But I'm wondering if there's conversation also happening about how, to the extent that there's modeling, like technical modeling being done to inform the CAP and the recommendations, that there's a thought about how the public engagement might inform like indicators that should be in that modeling. Because I know, well, I'll say from my experience, it can be more challenging for some to say like, well, this is what we're hearing from the public, and then this is what the modeling is saying, if those two things are totally disconnected, and that public engagement can be a way to help shape like what's important to be including in the model, like what indicators or data sources or, you know, the populations we're studying, and then can also be important like touch points later to say like, translate, you know, this is what we're seeing and how do you react to that. So I just, again, I know, well, Jane's not here, and I'm not sure to what extent modeling is even happening for the CAP update, but just a question I'll put out there and maybe something to be thought about moving forward.
Claire, I can just say there will be modeling as part of the CAP update. There will be technical work. In the mechanism for how they're working with Climate Action Office and Jane on that is through the Science and Data Subcommittee is providing this sort of oversight. Pulling public comment into that has not been the focus, in part because we're not sure how to ask that question right now. But it's an interesting dilemma, right? And among all the specific things to talk about, like how do you prioritize your time when you're with somebody? And that could be a cool one to talk about, right? I think for the resilience implementation strategy, which is also part of this work, that's very much focused on like, how do we know if we're getting there, right? If we're more resilient, if you feel more resilient. So those questions around indicators for that are a big piece of the interaction there. That's more around resilience indicators than the emissions reductions indicators.
Yeah, it's a big question. I also don't totally know how to like make those things fit together. We've struggled with it a lot during our renewable energy engagement, but I think I'll just say, I think we tended to do it by asking the prioritization question, like, what do you prioritize? And then tried to filter that into what went into the modeling, which I think we took a stab at. We probably could have done it better, but it's really challenging. And it's challenging because I think Kashka hit the nail on the head with like the translational work is like, we have to translate, I think sometimes in both ways, right? Like the public comment needs to be translated into a way that the policy people and the data people like understand how it's applicable to them, and vice versa too. So.
Yeah, I guess related to that, I'm curious as a question in the community engagement efforts, if members that are of the public that are there are feeling like the climate change topics are acceptable, that they have been communicated, or the recommendations have even been communicated in a plain language way that they understand kind of like what's in the climate action plan, what are the priorities? Because again, it's sort of like there's all these different ways that the information exchange occurs, right? It's like it's the public comments making their way back to the council and the subcommittees, but then there's also the recommendations being kind of accessible and plain language so that people understand and know what questions to ask or what concerns to voice. And I continue to wonder if we have a sense from public engagement efforts if that's occurring. They're feeling that it's accessible information, they understand, and it's plain language for them.
Lashka can answer that.
No. In a very simple, so when you break it down, okay, no, let me back up. When you break things down, not at the 30,000 foot level, but when you break things down, so for example, like if we're talking EVs or something, there's certainly a lot to talk about with folks, right, on the ground, and you're going to be hearing all about it. But when you're discussing like the bigger picture, it's, for lack of a better way to describe it, because folks aren't able to access or understand the larger the larger picture of it, it oftentimes, I think, and the responses are fear-based, and so thinking that government is making decisions without the input of these communities. It's making decisions on what they think is best without the consideration of how it's going to impact like frontline communities, how it impacts the bottom line of, people with disabilities or, the elderly. They just don't think about that. And, pushing certain programs and pushing certain policies without the consideration of the public at large makes these policies really detrimental to these folks. So their responses are fear-based because of not knowing all these processes that are going on, that they don't know the intricacies of them, and it is not simplified enough for them to understand it. And I don't even know if it can be. Like, I don't know if a lot of this can be simplified or how it could be simplified. I mean, we're talking about like a ginormous piece here. So, and that's when I say we need to, the discussions become on a personal level. And so these conversations that we're having that are, the impacts that folks are feeling on a personal level, we then need to translate in a way, for you guys, or at least make sure that they're noted so that they can affect the bigger picture. It's so complex. I don't know. Does that make any sense? Did that make any sense?
Great. Yeah.
Let me try to answer slightly differently, or maybe I'll be saying the same thing with a different ramble. In meeting all the peoples that we have met, I met one person who knew about climate action plan to a level I hadn't read. So this person actually knew and was asking me about like the weatherization and how it's working and the budget and all that. There was only one person, and I kind of gave some of the resources. Rest of the folks, like, there was not much of awareness, and at times, like, it is true, like, it's nothing new for the folks here because I've worked with y'all, like, we have been in the same subcommittee. There was one focus group that I was at, and I kept on hearing, I was more of note taking. It got to a level where I felt like people were not sharing the truth. Who am I to be the, decider of what is truth? But I jumped in and I said, listen, I kind of hear the hesitation because y'all might think you're talking to the government. You have personal stories, like, they don't have to be fabricated answer. Like, just keep it real. Nobody's going to do anything here. Like, just say the truth. Only then I saw the shift in some of the conversation being like, oh yeah, no, this, that, and all, right? Like, so that kind of speaks to, I guess, the lack of engagement in some way, where to a point, like, people felt like, when the government comes, like, you have to say it a certain way. And I think that's where our engagement, there has not been a whole lot because there was not a whole lot of time. I don't want to make it seem like we're taking good care of every single engagement. Just listen to us. Like, I don't want to promise that. There was very limited time we're trying to do. But when we show up, and if we do not, stop, as Mona already said, like, don't stop. then you lose it, right? I think we were starting to build that relationship, or to a point, like if there is anything that comes up, and if there was ability to do more, like the community see us, and like we're showing up and really listening to their stories, not from a policy perspective. Like EV vehicle conversation can go into any different forum, from manufacturing to the incentive and whatnot, and we can have a different type of conversation. But when showing up, the conversation become, okay, in terms of incentive, I heard you need to have X amount of money and I don't. It's not about the impact per se, but like I understand that we need to move into that direction, but I just don't have it. Or, you know, that people like me in my communities generally have larger families, and I have not seen a single EV that carries X number of people. And are y'all gonna think about that as well? Is there gonna be any like, those are the questions where, to a point, like when I said in the beginning, maybe there is no complex understanding in an intellectual, let's meet and talk about it way, but like when you bring it down to impact, then people are understanding and people are aware. They have seen the impact. They understand that something needs to be done, because I no longer can celebrate my December birthday in, you know, well, sliding down the hill. I see that's happening, right? Or my gardens are super dry, and people are providing those feedback. But how do we translate, again, I think like Claire, as you were saying, right? Like, how do we translate that into a policy perspective? I see that as a policy perspective. It is a policy recommendation. How do we do that? That's something that we need to continue thinking about. And again, I always think of Just Transition as an ally in the work that we are doing. So, you know, when we send those feedback and whatnot, if there is a specific way of asking those questions and whatnot, do let us know. We are former members, still have good feelings about Just Transition Committee, and would be happy to work that way. And if I answer it differently at all, but I just had to. It's been a while since I talked to y'all.
And I appreciate the distinction between the Climate Council and the work of the public engagement efforts being separate from government. I think that's really important for clarification.
I want to first of all say I appreciate the puppies in the screen. It's awesome. I see at least two. That's great. One of the thing I just wanted to briefly say, and then I'm aware of time, was just that, I've tried to listen on YouTube at 1.5 speed, some old meetings to catch up a little bit, and then I've only been to one other subcommittee, two others thus far. So I don't know how pertinent this is, but just in terms of thinking about, because it's the first update of the plan, there may be things where it's like, oh, we did this well enough, we can deprioritize it. Like those are conversations I think are starting to happen, or and especially in terms of like implementation steps going forward. And just in terms of, I'm thinking, and maybe this is too strategic, or maybe this is not what the engagement is for, but perhaps a check on some of those, and just in terms of participation, like have the programs been around long enough to penetrate to folks who may really need it, but may not have access for a variety of reasons, and just making sure that we don't move on and leave a lot of people behind. I think that's something that I'm seeing in policy discussions outside of this group, moving on to heat pumps when people haven't weatherized and that sort of thing, because the numbers are getting there. But it's like, but are the people's needs being met as equally, if not more so important than the numbers themselves? And I think that's something that I'm just cognizant of. And if there's a way that we can also sort of ask about participation, or about awareness of a program, and about what kind of timeline would be needed for participation, or what, you know, barriers would needed to be overcome for participation, and anything that those can turn into implementation best practices, which I know we don't necessarily get to set in the plan or either. But I think those would be really impactful reminders also for those who are drafting and who are maybe deprioritizing steps based on their own perception of where we are meeting our, you know, legally obligating, you know, greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals, which I understand. But just also like where those numbers are coming from, and if everybody is being served in those, I think would be really important.
And I think that's where I will emphasize the collaboration that we are trying to seek. I think that was the goal, right? I am a consultant. I'm consulting, and there is so much that can be done as a consultant. However, if the committees, including Just Transition Committee, and it's an invitation to all committees, right? Like when we are asking for the questions that we are asking, when we are sharing about the events that are happening, if there are any specific question that needs to be asked a certain way, and if you recommend that question and send it to us, that would be very helpful for us, because at times we'll show up, I'll be very blunt, like, and we're like, so what are we going to ask, right? Like the impact of climate, like we can ask so many times, but if there are any specific question that needs to be asked to a specific group of people that we're meeting, or if we need to target a specific group of people, like if you send us that recommendation, it will be very helpful even for us. And I think that's an invitation. I don't think I'm, like overstepping from our goal. Like that is the goal. Let's build that collaboration. Like if there is a specific question that needs to be asked, please send us. Like that would actually make our engagement activities much easier, I would say.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I think any questions regarding policy, or even if you guys have questions regarding different programs, how they're working out, if anyone has utilized them, what worked, what didn't work, I think all that information is helpful. And since we're already out there talking to folks, if you can think of anything, absolutely, that's what we're there for. And it does makes our job a little bit easier as consultants to be able to talk about specifics or ask about specifics, because sometimes generalities, we can just talk for hours people about generalities, right? So yeah.
And I'll leave us with a systemic change. If there is a system change, we can talk about interpersonal. And kudos to Sophie and Mona here. When people are registering for any public engagement, now we have language accessibility. If folks needs any translation, it is included in the registration page. It's not people have to email, reach out to anybody. It is included within the registration page. Not a big victory, but it is a slow process of like moving into that direction. We're making those changes slowly. So
well, I think I'm sensing a lull in the conversation. Really appreciate kind of the fact that the three of you and your efforts are representing kind of much of the desires and suggestions from this subcommittee in how we're engaging in the communities and how we're doing our best to translate and create space, and particularly to hear from frontline community members. So we're grateful I'm grateful, I can speak for myself, I'm grateful that you're doing what you're doing. I'm grateful that you are the ones that are out there capturing ideas and sharing that back with those that are working on the plan. So let's have you back in a couple of months. So that might be a nice segue for us to, I want to just quickly run through what's next for our subcommittee. And then if we have a moment, we've sort of dropped down to fewer subcommittee members, but I want to also maybe go back to the piece, Claire, that we thought that you might touch on, which is the knowledge bank tool. But let me talk about the Just Transition sort of like upcoming kind of few months. So soon, following tonight's meeting, I think what we should do, what I'd like to do is send 2 emails, one from Sophie that includes some edits to the best practices for public comment document, and an email from Kelly or I with the minutes, so that folks kind of can wrap how the kind of meetings through June have gone. There's the climate kickoff meetings in June that we'd love to see Just Transition Subcommittee representation at. So that's the 18th and the 19th. The idea is that this summer would not include Just Transition Subcommittee meetings. So we're not meeting formally as a subcommittee in July or August. And instead really hoping that this is a time for you to connect if you are a liaison with your other subcommittee as a liaison.
There was an email that Jane, I think it came, or maybe it came from Sophie, actually, I can't recall. Came from the Climate Action Office that kind of solidified the liaison appointments, let you know that if you are a liaison, it might be a good strategy to reach out to the co-chairs of the subcommittee that you're liaisoning with, and kind of both introduce yourselves and get started in that relationship, since that's really designed to be a portion of our focus for the summer and fall. We also wanted to create these 2 practice sessions in July and August, while not mandatory, and actually we don't want a quorum at each of these meetings, to be a practice session for using the guiding principle. So Carrie has actually, I believe, still committed to facilitating those practice sessions. One is on July 18th at 4:30, and another is on August 6th at noon. I just wanted to do just like a technical check-in. Who are we expecting is going to schedule those meetings, or those calendar hold? Is that something, Sophie, that you would do, or that you would want me to do, since it's not, or Carrie to do, since it's not a normal Just Transition Subcommittee meeting time? We might have lost Sophie. I know she was in transition. If you're trying to speak, Sophie, we can't hear you yet.
How about now?
Yes. Yep.
Yay. Okay. I'm happy to send out those meeting invitations. For some reason, I thought that Carrie had already sent them out. So I think maybe that was just an email that confirmed the time. So I can refer back to that to send out an actual invitation.
Great. That would be helpful. And again, the idea of these practice sessions is to sort of work with the guiding principles or the assessment questions and sort of just practice what that might look like and feel like. Especially if you happen to be a liaison that's joining other subcommittees, that could be of interest or value to any of our subcommittee members. The idea is that we can't have more than 8 members at each of those practice sessions to constitute a quorum and then have it trigger an actual meeting. So we'll just have to keep track of that and make sure that if you plan to attend, to accept the meeting invitation, and we'll kind of loosely monitor quorum. I wanted to also share that co-chairs and our outstanding support staff, both Claire and Carrie, are going to meet a few times over the summer as like a strategic planning conversation to sort of be prepared to kick us off in September when we reconvene as a subcommittee with like a real clear strategy for like what we're focused on and our strategy for the fall and winter season. I would also offer that anyone is welcome to join those conversations from the subcommittee. Again, we don't want to trigger a quorum, but if there's others of you that would also like to be a part of, either you're interested in the strategic planning of the subcommittee's future, or you're not a liaison, or you just want to stay engaged, please reach out to me, and I'd be happy to have additional participation in those sessions that we've scheduled for July and August. As again, subcommittee planning, getting organized, keeping the momentum to keep us organized for the fall when we reconvene. And I think that's it. Those are all kind of the logistical pieces I wanted to share with everyone. Sophie, is there anything else that I missed or that you want to add?
One thing just to add on, that I do have results from our poll for finding a new regular meeting time starting in the fall. And I believe it was the first Thursday of the month at 4 p.m. still that have won out. I'll double check that, and I'll get out fall meeting invitations at some point this summer, but just wanted to confirm that we do have a new time that appears to work for folks.
Great. I was thinking about that at one point and that fell off my list. So thanks for remembering to bring that up, Sophie, and for those that filled out the survey. All right, so I guess this is sort of like summer hiatus. Enjoy summer break from Just Transition Subcommittee. Enjoy being a liaison if that's your function. and look forward to seeing you at some upcoming meetings. Claire, 6:59.
Yeah, so we didn't talk about the knowledge bank, so I will just email everybody, but for Indra and Kashka and David, I did want to mention it because this is an idea that came up in a couple subcommittee meetings ago where we thought as people are going into other subcommittees, it would be helpful to have a sort of bank of resources that they could use if they're not a subject matter expertise in the subcommittee they're going into, and also to collect previous examples of public engagement that's been done. I think, Indra, to your point of like, we've been listening, can we draw on that in addition to what we're doing? So I would just say, for the subcommittee members, I will email out and ask for if you know of resources to send them to me, but I would also say to the CBI team, as you're out and you're hearing of resources or other public engagement that's been done that we could draw on, we'd be happy to include it in that resource that I think was primarily intended to serve just transition subcommittee members as they're going out into other subcommittees, but could easily become a resource for the other subcommittees themselves as they're developing recommendations. So
Great. Thank you for that so much, Claire. All right, so it'll be another Just Transition Subcommittee email that folks will receive here in the coming days. Matthew.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on my, calling as they call it. I haven't yet. I don't know. I think I've been set to do the transportation and capital invest. I've not yet been into those conversations yet, or had those conversations with my part of those subcommittees yet. So I'm wondering if that's still being rolled out for the July and August. I just need more guidance on that because it sounds like, I'm supposed to be in part of those conversations, but I've not yet had anything yet since our first meeting. So
This is Sophie. Matthew, I did hear from Jane that you were at the meeting that happened this past month for the technical advisory committee.
Yeah, okay. I'm still waiting for but I heard I was supposed to be on the transportation and the cap and invest one, which, I'm still waiting on that. I don't know if that's still, being
No, that's
being
the
formalized.
one that I meant. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. Jane, I don't know if you've had a direct phone call with Jane, but she also mentioned she was going to reach out to you directly. Has that happened?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll follow up with her.
Matthew, that's the one that you and there was like some work, a flurry of emails, and then they changed the meeting. And then I think you were able to make the very beginning, but it's when we were rating those two proposals. That was the only meeting I think we've had thus far.
Okay. So like I said, there is something, so there's probably more, like I said, it just, I don't know if that's still going to be, still in progress or still, I'm just wondering if I'm still being involved in that conversation. I don't know. I'm just still waiting on, what next,
Yeah, I think it's going to take us all a little bit to kind of kick off these liaison roles. And so appreciate you're connected to so many different groups, Matthew, that let's hope that becomes a little more clear and robust as kind of the summer kicks off and subcommittees get meeting.
Yeah, refined. Yeah, it's just, so people know where they need to be at and the correct place that they are subcommittee for, so there ain't going to be, confusion. Thank you.
Great. Well, again, thanks everyone. Wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening off the meeting. Great to see Kashka, Indra, and David. We'll reconvene with you in another quarter once we're back meeting. So maybe see you sometime in the fall.
Thank you so much.
And Mona, stay cool. 130 degrees doesn't sound fun. So
no.
The true climate change. I'm living it now.
I read that and I'm like, get some water.
Yes, it's
go on the tubes.
56 degrees, yeah. Okay. Have a wonderful
Take care
day.
of yourself.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
everybody.